Again, welcome. This is a session on the comparison trap and how to get out of it. Um, this is such an important topic. It is the source of a lot of our suffering as human beings. Um, Teddy Roosevelt, I think back in the late 1800s, so a long time ago, called comparison the thief of joy. And that was long before Instagram and TikTok and everything else that we think of today when we think of the comparison trap and how we get sucked into it so much of the time. So it's part of the human condition, and we'll get into that. Um, and it really does make us miserable often. And I guess the difference with social media is that it's become like a full time occupation for us at this point. And I'll probably talk at some point about how gratitude is an important tool to combat this and counter the impact it has on us. But really, what um, what I want as a takeaway is to really understand like how this works, why we do this, what the impact is it's having on you, and and that it is just set up to make us suffer, and maybe some ideas on how to minimize it a bit, right? It's not going to go away. We're wired this way, but we can get better at it, right? Reduce some of our suffering. Um, and a lot of us do this, comparing ourselves to other people constantly. And a lot of it's subconscious, a lot of it's not conscious. Um, it just happens, right? When look at online, you see someone else's vacation or their house or the promotion they got. They put something on LinkedIn or the new job or you know something about their relationship on social media. Um, the way they look, the way they dress, right? Their level of fitness, whatever. They're off on a vacation in their bathing suit, whatever it is. Um, it could even just be about how at ease some people seem to feel with themselves. And it's such a stark comparison, maybe, to the way you feel about yourself. And and you can feel it, right? You may not be conscious of the fact that you're doing a comparison when you see them online, but you can almost feel that body contraction, right? Kind of feeling like, ugh, right? And you know, you may even have that kind of voice in your head, oh, why not me? Why don't I get to do that? What's wrong with me? Why aren't I farther along, on my journey professionally or whatever? Um, and part of what makes that comparison so insidious, so um, almost evil, is that what you're actually doing is you're comparing the way you feel inside with what they're presenting on the outside, right? Those are two totally different things, but we're treating them the same, right? We're comparing how we feel on the inside with how they appear on the outside, which is ludicrous when you think about it for a moment. But that's what's happening, right? And, you're comparing at the same time, like how you feel about everything in your life, all of it, right? Your triumphs, your struggles, your failures, your anxiety at 3 o'clock in the morning when you can't go back to sleep, the doubts you have about yourself, all of it. You're comparing all of that to their external, highly curated, you know, sharing of some little teeny portion of their existence. Um, it's totally not fair, but it's also like a huge mismatch, right? Of what you're comparing. It's not fair at all. Um, and yet you're wondering, like, when you compare these two completely different things, like why you don't feel better. It's kind of ludicrous, right? Um, so why do we compare? And some people think that it's vanity, ego. It's all about our insecurities, all that. It's actually kind of wiring that was wired inside of us, when we were in tribes, tens or 100,000 years ago or something like that. There, in psychology, there's even a name for it: social comparison theory. And the idea is that we evaluate ourselves by comparing ourselves to other people regularly, automatically. In particular, though, when we lack objective measures for evaluating ourselves. Um, and so, in the absence of having some kind of objective, measurable way of knowing how we're doing, we compare ourselves to other people. And this was wired in us because when we were in tribes, your world, your community was, 100 people, 150 people, whatever it was. And you needed to be able to know where you stood within that group, right? It would, for survival's sake, right? Um, were you able to protect yourself and your tribe? Were you, what role would you play in the tribe? Um, that was an important skill. It's not so important now. And it's really problematic because back then you're comparing yourself again to dozens or scores of people. Whereas now you've got 8 billion people on the planet and millions, or, even a couple of billion of them are available to compare yourself to online. So this is a really bad instinct at this point, doomed to cause us a lot of suffering. Um, and 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 again, it's when it was within the tribe, you were comparing yourself to other people in things that were pretty observable and where you could get a pretty big picture of the other person that you might be comparing yourself to. Now we're just, it's like, you know, hundreds of millions of people, and we're getting like this little teeny itty bitty curated snapshot of them. Um, so it's a pretty bad miss at this point in terms of our wiring and the society that we actually live in. It happens a lot, as we've talked about before. Um, and we tend to do it in one of two directions, right? We either do kind of an upward comparison, right? We compare ourselves to people who seem to have more, achieve more, do more than we do. And that's probably the most common um, of the two. I don't know if one's more toxic than the other, but this may be more kind of corrosive to our self-esteem. Um, and it is always going to result in feelings of inadequacy because there's always someone who's got more, right? Or does more, or looks better, or whatever than we do. Always, always, always. There's always going to be somebody. You look at even like, these billionaires, why do they keep wanting more, more, more? They've got billions and billions of dollars, tens of billions of dollars. And but there's always someone more. Even when you get to the point where, like, say Elon Musk is the wealthiest person on the planet, right? But then the stock price dips, and all of a sudden he's not the most wealthy person on the planet. And so, oh, I got to get more so that no one will ever top it, because otherwise, like, you're either always behind somebody, or you feel like you're briefly at the top, but somebody else is going to overtake you any minute. And that happens to all of us with all of these ways that we compare ourselves to other people. There's always someone who's got more and who's doing better than you do, no matter what metric you're using to measure yourself and compare yourself by. And even when we set goals and then achieve them, thinking that achieving the goal, getting the job, getting the promotion, getting the raise, getting the bonus, whatever it is, even when we think getting a degree, right? Even when we achieve the goal, we think it's going to bring us so much joy and peace and satisfaction and all that. But it's not, because as soon as we get there, there's another point of comparison that we start using, right? What's the next promotion? What's the next level of wealth? What's the next type of house, or getting the vacation house or the bigger car or the newer car, whatever? Every year we compare with who's got the latest phone, right? Um, there's always something new, a new point of comparison. So you don't get to sit there and enjoy the satisfaction from what you achieved for very long, if at all, before all of a sudden you're comparing people on something else. And so it's almost like, you reach that point that you were striving for, and then you come up with a new point of comparison that kind of puts you back down at the bottom again, and where you're going to try and make your way back up, which is bizarre, but that's the way it works, right? Um, and there's virtually no amount of achievement that you're going to achieve, no level of fitness, whatever. There's always going to be some way that you could compare yourself to somebody else that's going to torpedo that satisfaction. And the gap you're trying to close there between you and these other people isn't real, right? It's a figment of our imagination, that we're focusing on very limited data and kind of false means of comparison with other people. Um, so that's the first, this upward comparison. Who's got it better than I do? The other one obviously is downward comparison. And that's comparing ourselves to people who seem to have less. And this one, is is going to make you maybe feel better for the moment. It can bring you a brief sense of relief or superiority. Oh, at least I'm not as bad as they are, you know? But it's temporary, right? And it's not real, because it's not about really an evaluation of how well you are or are not doing. It's based on somebody else's pain and suffering, their difficulties, and getting some brief relief that I'm okay ish, right? Because at least I'm not like them. And it definitely is corrosive towards your empathy, right? Because you start to need others to be worse off than you are to feel okay, not even better necessarily, but okay-ish temporarily. Um, and it turns you into a basement person. Some of you have heard me talk about the two kinds of people in the world: balcony people and basement people. Balcony people cheer you on, basement people pull you down. And this downward comparison tendency turns you into a basement person, where you're looking for more people who are doing poorly and trying to get some sense of satisfaction out of that. Um, it's that's not healthy. It's not who we want to be as people, right? That's not a healthy society. Um, I lived in the Soviet Union for a couple of years as a diplomat, and I can tell you there was a lot of that, a lot of downward comparison. And when people did the upward comparison, they looked for ways to pull that person down. Someone got a new car. They were like, how did they get that car? They must have done something wrong. And they report them to the, police or the KGB, and try and get them in trouble, figuring they must have done something corrupt to get the car where I've been waiting 10 years to get my car. And so, I saw firsthand how it just destroys society, right? There's a, you know, concept in South Africa, Ubuntu, that I've talked about before. Maybe I'll do another session on it soon. And um, and and the concept is, I am because we are because I am. It's about interconnectedness. I can't be safe, happy, successful, fulfilled unless everybody else in my community is, and vice versa. The community can't be safe, whole, successful, happy, etc. if I'm not. And we are interconnected. And the problem is with this comparison stuff is like we're pulling ourselves apart. We're not seeing ourselves as part of a whole. Uh, we're seeing ourselves as these individuals, and that somehow your happiness or satisfaction is dependent on you being better than other people, and not just better than other people, better than everybody, right? Otherwise, you're always going to feel like you're not measuring up. So it's really toxic, really, really toxic. Um, Raphael says, you keep moving the goalpost. Yeah, absolutely. That's part of what happens here. Keep moving the goalpost. And with social media and everything, like you constantly have people who are moving the goalpost for you all the time, every minute, right? So I would argue that while I mentioned at the beginning that a lot of people look at this and say, "Oh, this is a self-esteem problem. A self-esteem problem. That's why you keep comparing yourself to other people." And sure, that may be part of it, but it's really, I think, a values problem or deficit. Um, it's not so much about I just need to feel better about myself. That's the symptom. That's real, but that's the symptom. The root cause is, I think, confusion about who you are and what you believe in, what really matters to you, and who you're trying to become. It's about measuring yourself by other people's means of measurements, right? By their metrics of what success is, what happiness is, right? What beauty is, because you don't have your own. You haven't done the work yet inside to get clarity and commitment to what you actually value, right? What success, fulfillment, happiness, meaning, purpose, joy, what's underlying those for you. And when you know what your values are, what success looks like for you, which is probably not going to be the title and the money and all that, right? For me, it's always been about impact on other people. Then you get clarity about what kind of life you're trying to build, how you want to show up as like your best version of your authentic self. Once you get that clarity, then other people's lives and what they're showing doesn't matter as much to you in terms of evaluating your own life. You have measures to evaluate your own life now and yourself, right? I don't look at social media and I'm not as like caught up in the big house, the money, the cars and all that. What I know that what lights me up is making an impact. It's when somebody here says, "Oh my gosh, that resonates with me so much. That helps me so much." When a client has that aha moment, like that's what I love. And so the comparison stuff doesn't matter so much. Um, you know, their lives and what they're portraying online just becomes like almost like irrelevant data points that don't really match up with what you're looking for in your life. Um, and when we don't have this clarity about our own values and what matters to us, we're their other people's values or what they seem to be, right? And their, expressions of what they think is important in their life starts to tug at us. And that pulls us out of alignment with who we really are and want to be, right? So it's an integrity issue at its core, right? Either because we lack the clarity about our values or we haven't really thought it through much and committed to them. Um, and this obviously relates to my favorite book, The Four Agreements, right? Don't take anything personally, right? Not just in terms of like other people's like literal critique of us, right? And how they treat us day to day, but also like how other people are living, what they value, what they achieve. Like that has nothing to do with you, right? It could be interesting data for you in terms of like, oh, is there something that this is poking at that I value that I'm not aware of, or like, let me be curious about that. But other than that, it's not relevant to you. Similarly, four agreements don't make assumptions. We make so many assumptions about what their lives are really like and are they really happy or not, and we have no idea. We have no idea what it's like for them on the inside. Constantly am hearing people and reading people and meeting people who talk about that everybody thought that everything was perfect for them on the outside, everything looked great, and on the inside they're feeling terrible. The curated version of their life and themselves that they're showing online or in your real world life, sometimes it's not the full picture. It never is. um, when I told family and friends that in my first marriage that we were getting a divorce, people were shocked generally. Like, oh my God, you guys seem so happy together. Our best friends, they had no idea. No idea. Um, you don't know how people might be suffering inside. Someone, brought up, I was doing a session about this the other day, and someone brought up, someone they knew. Well, even this happened to me last year. I lost a lot of weight in a short amount of time, about a year and a half ago, because I was very sick. But people didn't know I was sick. Were like, "Oh, you look good. Lost some weight." Like, no, I'm really sick. Um, right? That happens. That happens. Um, you don't know what people are hiding inside, right? What they're actually dealing with. Um, uh, Charlotte, good morning to you. Suleiman says, good morning, and friends. I also blame social media and culture programming on TV with reality shows and lifestyle of the rich and famous and MTV cribs. Absolutely. Awareness of these things, uh, right, isn't good. And yeah, it and they're toxic because we're wired this way, right? I mean, that ultimately the cause of it is that we're wired to do this. But now we've created all of these TV shows and social media that put it right in our face and manipulate that instinct to compare in order to capture and hold our attention, right? That's what's going on there. So great point. um, and some people will say like, oh, that's a bad character flaw, that you keep comparing yourself to other people. You're envious, and envy's bad. It's a mortal sin, right? But one way to think about the envy is when you find yourself envying someone else, maybe like take a pause and go like, what's that about? What what is there something interesting here? So for instance, if I'm envious, like, I'll take Rick Rubin. So Rick Rubin, famous music producer. Uh, when I started to really learn more about him and listen to interviews with him, yeah, there's probably a little bit of envy there that I had. Like, wow, I mean, I love music. I always wish I'd had like a career in music of some kind. And so there's a little bit like, oh wow, he's really got the life. He's living in Malibu and got the recording studio at home, and he's worked with all these amazing artists and made all this amazing music. And oh wow. And but what's really going on there is like, yeah, I wish I was more connected to music, and I wish I had more of a sense of being a creative person. I was envious of like the creativity now. Well, the more I paid attention to that with curiosity, I realized, oh, yeah, like connection to music and more opportunity for creativity in my life. I could do something about that actually. I don't just have to sit here and feel bad, and be like envious or jealous of him. I can actually do things. So it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to take a crack at learning to play the guitar again. I'm going to start practicing the guitar more again. Uh, I read his book on creativity, The Creative Act. And it turns out like there's lots of ways in my life that I am creative and experience a lot of the same things that he experiences when he's been being creative and is in that flow state. And so it's like, oh, yeah. So in that sense, the envy, if I'm curious about it rather than just letting it make me miserable, can reveal something that maybe I actually can do something about. Um, and that's interesting and that's helpful, right? So sometimes the comparison piece, we can allow it to just create suffering, or we can mine it for some data that actually can help us improve our lives, right? Um, there is one point of comparison that can be helpful, and that's comparing yourself with your past self to see growth, right? To see how far you actually have come, to see what you've overcome. Um, to see how much more aligned with your values you may be today than you were a year or two ago. Um, are you being more honest, more intentional, more loving? Um, that's growth. That can be really helpful, right? And and if there are areas where you feel like you haven't, well, that's data that you can use to inspire you to focus on growing in those areas, right? So that comparison with yourself, using your own metrics of what really matters to you, your core values, what you want to have front and center in your life to give you a sense of purpose and meaning, right? Making a difference in the lives of others, being healthy, right? You could do that. Am I better with sleep than I was a year ago? If not, let me work on getting to bed at the same time every night. That's something you can work on, right? That will reap tremendous benefits for you. So that comparison to past self, that can be helpful, right? Um, uh, let's see. Here we are. Suleiman says we're wired as humans to always want more. Um, yeah, it's often the case. And again, in terms of what, if it's growth and learning, great. If it's better health, good, right? Whatever's within our control. Um, More time with family, friends, that's going to bring us more joy, etc. It's when it goes to the things that don't actually bring us joy over time, that are not lasting, that are focused on trying to somehow be better than everybody else, in terms of status, those things not so much, right? But you can channel that impulse for more into healthier ways, right? Hopefully. And Suleiman goes on to say, uh, I've learned most things in life is temporary. Happiness, it goes away. The new house feeling, the new car feeling, absolutely. They just got married. Yeah, you can see it with the phones again. Like you get the new phone, and it's like, oh, I'm so excited! I'm getting the new phone. You get the new phone, like, ooh, get it out of the box. 3 hours later, it's just your phone, right? So you're right; those things do not. That happiness is momentary, right? It's fleeting, um, right? And you can, as you say, like enjoy those moments, but also be aware that those things are not worth focusing on. They're fleeting, right? And very wise, yes, as Tanya says. Um, Charlotte says, I keep comparing myself to me pre illness and me now. I get frustrated when I can't do the things I used to. I'm envious of who I used to be. The kicker is that when I could do all those things, I'd compare myself to others and felt I wasn't doing enough, right? There you go. I'd say I live a more authentic life today, still learning. This is where mindfulness comes in. Yeah, Charlotte, you're right. And I feel the same way. I was just talking with somebody about this yesterday about, I still got some symptoms from the spinal infection from a year and a half ago. And it'd be very easy for me to focus on that and feel bad and feel worse than I did before I had the infection. But the reality is, on so many other levels, I'm in a better place than I was a year, 2 years, 3 years ago. And so I choose to focus on the ones where I've had growth, and on the areas where I still want to get better, like trying to deal with some of the symptoms. I do what I can within my control about that. My new Substack coming out today is about this. Is about your circle of control and circle of influence, right? Which I talked about recently. And that's what I'm trying to focus on: is what can I control that really matters to me, that's aligned with my values. That's where my energy and focus goes. And the other stuff, kind of let it go, right, as best as I can. Um, uh, and Suleiman says, so true, Steve. Positive consistency is a good habit forming, right? Yeah, absolutely. Sleep habits, eating habits, definitely improved on. And that's wonderful. And those are things that do bring you more joy, better quality life, right? Enhance lots of different aspects of your life. So that's the kind of stuff that's good, but it's not about comparing you to other people. I'm in a lot better shape than I was a year ago, say. Um, but there are plenty of people I could look at online and go, oh my gosh, look at that person. But that's not relevant to me. What's relevant to me is, how do I feel, and how do I want my body to feel, and how, strong do I want to feel, and how much energy do I want to have, and all that. That's what I need to focus on. Right. Um, so again, so you may want to, pause for a moment here and, ask yourself, maybe even close your eyes again for a moment. You know, who are you most frequently comparing yourself to, and why? And is it a certain type of person, a certain situation? Um, is it related to a certain type of life you imagined you'd have right now? Um, when does that get triggered? And how does that relate to what you actually want, and what you really value? Right. And if you use those values and what you really want in life as your measurement for how you're doing, how would you stand up? Right. Not comparing yourself to other people and their standards, their values. Where have you grown in the last year by your own values, your own standards? If anything pops up for you, pop it in the chat. Maybe you inspire somebody else, or somebody else will feel validated by seeing what you wrote. Um, I think I'm, for me, living with intentionality, embodying loving energy, learning and growing, trying to be healthier. Those are things that matter to me. And by those standards, I can really take a look and go, yeah, I'm doing pretty well and better than I was a year ago. Um, when I compare myself with other people, it's usually about the superficial stuff. It's often about travel, but I've been able to travel a lot in my life, and I have the ability to travel more. So it's really about me prioritizing that in a way. Um, uh, and that's where gratitude sometimes can come in, to remind ourselves that, like, oh, yeah, I do have things to feel blessed for. And I, can shift my brain chemistry within like 10 seconds just by focusing a little bit on gratitude. So why not do a little gratitude to help you shift yourself and your energy when you're finding yourself comparing with other people, right? Um, and then, understanding this, and understanding that comparison is a no-win situation, right? It's going to keep you losing. It's designed that way. Um, and that the only way to get a handle on it is to stop playing the comparison game as much as you are now. Um, so, what are you going to do about that this week? Is it try to get clarity about your own values, right? Maybe do a little journaling on that. take a walk in nature and think about it. Uh, Draft your own mission statement, your own personal mission statement, maybe. Um, I do a lot of this work with clients, right? And it's so fruitful. So you want to do a little bit of that. Uh, you're going to limit your social media time, maybe delete one or more of the apps. What is it you're going to commit to this week? Um, I'd also say that one of the things you can try this week is just first trying to be observant of when it happens and take a pause and name it. Oh, there I am comparing again. And ask yourself, like, is this telling me anything interesting or important about what I value or what I don't value or how I spend my time? And, you know, use that knowledge to make some choices about what your next steps are this week, how you want to evaluate your life and yourself by your own metrics, right? Because the comparisons are going to come. It's wired in and it's all around us, but we can choose not to participate in some of these platforms as much, if at all. And when you do find yourself comparing yourself to other people, the real question is, what do you do next? Do you catch it? Do you know what's happening? Can you name it? And can you learn anything from it? And then kind of refocus on what really matters to you. That's the practice. That's the practice. Um, so if anybody feels comfortable, put in the chat, like, what are your takeaways so far? And what are you going to commit to doing this week? Some small step that will help you get a hold on this somewhat. While people are doing that, as I mentioned at the beginning, these live sessions are free and they're supported with donations from people like you. So if you feel inspired to make a donation, thank you in advance for that. Really appreciate the support for this. I love doing these sessions, so it's nice when other people can support it as well. And I hope you're following me. If you're not, please do. And if you'd like to continue the conversation or explore how I can be of help on your journey with any of this stuff or anything else you're stuck with, you can reach out to me here on Insight Timer. I'd love to have a conversation with you. And I also have a group here on Insight Timer, Living with Integrity, or living with Integrity and Joy, which is what I tend to call everything. And I hope you join that if you haven't already. And I share my newsletters there and meditations, etc. So I hope you'll reach out and follow me and join the group there. And then I've got a mini course that people seem to like on living with integrity. And you can ask questions. We can have dialogue there as well. So that's another place to do it. And I've got a bunch of meditations that I hope you check out. I've got a new one on stress. And if I've got more coming in the next couple of weeks, and if there's something you'd like me to do a meditation on, let me know. I'd like to be responsive to what you would like to see. And then I've got pretty much every Wednesday at noon Eastern, I do these live sessions. And the next one is on what does it mean to love well? We're going to look at what does it really mean to love well yourself, other people, etc. So I hope you'll reserve your spot for that and join me next Wednesday for that. Let's go back to the chat again. And Sullivan and Amy, thank you so much. Charlotte says, I was put on medical retirement 10 years ago. I loved my career in education and loved transforming the lives of my students and staff. I'll bet you were great at it. I didn't realize how much I identified as a scientist and educator. Yeah, our identities get tied up in that kind of work, right? I still grieve this loss, but just recently my therapist reminded me that this downtime has afforded me the opportunity to raise my son and be there for him, which is beautiful. And it's true. I was a workaholic and would have missed out on being there for my son, and I get to help him every day with his schoolwork. He's taking AP chemistry, which is just up my alley. It's been fun being his teacher. That is beautiful, Charlotte. And that often happens, right? I was just watching a clip with Dolly Parton, who passed, this week. And somebody asked her, what have been some of your biggest mistakes? And she says, I haven't had any. And she said, look, I know a lot of people look at things that happen to them as mistakes, or things they do as mistakes. But she said, look, I tend to look at everything that happens in my life as events. And I tend not to look at them as like, mistakes or successes, whatever, because sometimes my what somebody else might have called one of my biggest mistakes, years later I'll understand was a real gift to me, and I'm grateful for, because I learned so much from it, or I gained something from it in the end. You lose one thing, you gain something else. And I think that is often the case. And comparison gets in the way of that kind of wisdom that she had. So I found that really, really relevant, and I think exactly what you're talking about there, Charlotte. So, I'm sorry that you've had to experience the loss that you've had, but also that's a tremendous gift to have that experience with your son. So that's beautiful, and he's so lucky for it as well. Um, Anyways, anybody else, if you have any last questions or thoughts, or epiphanies you want to share, or pushback, pop it in the chat. But otherwise, I just want to thank you for being here and taking time out of your day. I hope this is helpful. Um, Again, please follow me and reach out if you'd like to continue the conversation. And I'd love to be of help and have that conversation with you. And and take the commitment. Do one thing this week. It can be a small thing that gets you out of this trap a little bit, whether it's, you know, a day when you don't go on social media, or deleting one of the apps, or, spending more time reflecting on your own values and what matters to you. And, something. You can take one small step this week that can bring you a little less pain and suffering and a little more joy. But thank you all. Really appreciate it. Victoria, Charlotte, everybody else in the chat, thank you so much. It makes it so much better. So thanks for sharing. And I look forward to seeing you next week, if not beforehand. So thank you all. Sending you all much love and gratitude. Have a great rest of your day.